Yes. So good morning, everyone. I thought I wouldn't be nervous because number one, it's just my life. Number two, I used to speak competitively. And so last night, and Evan and I, we kept typing me up. And even this morning, Sydney texted me. And we're just like, I'm a national champion. I've done this. But it's so different when it's your own story and you're sharing from a place of just my heart. There's no guarantee that I'm going to get through this without crying. So I'm already going to cry. I feel like it's like my wedding all over again. I'm just going to cry. So if I do, thank you. I'm going to try though, because I'm a professional. So we'll see. But as I'm starting, I prayed about this message a lot because I did ask Rick a while ago if I could speak to church, and I was all excited about it. I'm I want to speak, and he said yes, and so I was oh gosh, I'm going to speak. We didn't plan any dates, and then we decided at the beginning of April that we were going to move, and I'm there's only 3 Sundays left. It's not going to fit. We're here. It's fit. Obviously, it worked out. So as I prayed over this message and how I was going to share my story and all of that, I first wanted to come from it from multiple ways. The first way was I wanted to have this profound story and insert all these Bible verses and show you guys what I've learned over the years. It's not going to be anything like that. I think there's 2 verses that I inserted, courtesy of Google. And so don't expect, you may get something from it, you may not, but this is really me at the core. Some of my history, if you guys don't know about it, isn't the prettiest, and I'm going to say some things that might be dark, but all of it comes from a place of I've lived through this, and at the end of it, I can sit here saying, I know Jesus, I'm a married woman, I have 2 kids, and my life would not be the same if I didn't start coming to church. So, where do I begin? My favorite Bible verse has always been Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. I think it's really fitting that my favorite verse is something about a future, not in a present situation. And I fell in love with this verse a long time ago. This was honestly just something I loved. My sister gave me a journal with it on it. This has just been my verse. I love it so much. And I never really knew why. It just kind of gravitated towards me. But I feel it's really fitting of my life that the Bible verse that I really cling to is something that I have hope for a future. So it really helped me in a light place. Well, it gave me light in darkness that I've had. As I was typing this out a few weeks ago, I started it, and then I stopped and forgot about it, and then just asked Evan if we could not come to church today, and he said no. And so as I was typing this out, I was listening to There's Another in the Fire because I was just I need to put on some worship music and really get in the groove. And I first heard God say that he's always there for us, and especially in unexpected ways. He's always by our side. And that's always fitting because I didn't feel that. I didn't have that presence with him. So growing up, I lived with my mom. We lived in a separate household. My parents divorced when I was really little. And this isn't going to be I think it's, I don't remember the name of it, but my favorite movie is Gone with the Wind. And as they're waiting for, the confrontation after Scarlett gets attacked, they're sitting at Melanie's house and they're reading the book. I don't remember the name of it, but it's I am born. It's not going to be that, so I'm not going to go through this whole thing of starting with the birth of my life. We're going to skim through a bunch. But just to set up, I grew up in a separate parent household, so my parents divorced when I was 2. I have 2 older sisters from my mom and dad, and a whole other bunch of siblings. So we have an older brother and a younger sister and a younger brother. So I lived with my mom up until high school, and then I moved in with my dad. And growing up, we didn't go to church. We weren't the Sunday goers. We weren't even the holiday goers. We did the Bless Us, O Lord prayer before our food, and didn't really know what that meant. I just know that I had to say it if I wanted to eat. And so we didn't have a faith background. We didn't pray for things like how I pray when I lose my car keys now or my glasses. I'm dear Lord, please help me find them. So it wasn't the centerfold of my life. But in high school, I started living with my dad and my stepmom and my little sister and little brother. And I liked it. I don't remember what year it was. I think it was my sophomore year of high school. I had this friend in high school, and we started going to Mormon church. And I think at that point in my life, I was really searching for something. I wanted answers. I really wanted to, I felt like there was more to life. And so she was a Mormon. Her family went all the time, and I was always grounded on the weekends. I didn't clean my room or pick up after, or who knows. I didn't do anything. But I was allowed to go to Mormon church. So I went, and it was so cool. It lasted all Sunday. I don't know if you guys have ever been to Mormon church. I wouldn't recommend going now, but, it's cool. It was really cool then. It lasted all Sunday. So it was the whole day. And then after regular church service, you had small group studies, and then you went back to the church service. And then on weeknights, we had small group. And then on Saturdays, we had Mormon church dances. So it's literally middle school dances like that in a cafeteria, leave room for Jesus. And it was just really cool. So I went often. My favorite thing to say about Mormon church is they promised that they would get me a Bible with my name inscribed on the cover. And I was like, oh, this is so cool. And I never got it. So you should go back and ask for one, but it's okay. But Mormon church never sat well with me. It was something that was there when I needed it, but I never got that whole Joseph Smith thing. I didn't understand the water. I didn't know where it came from. I was just really confused. It never really clicked. And so I didn't have that peace that I knew there was something more in my life, in my faith life. And so skip a few years. It's my senior year of high school. And for those of you that don't know, our path is going to take a little ups and downs. It's going on a downhill scary moment. My senior year of high school, I did something that is not every parent's dream, and I ended up getting pregnant in high school. It is not a regret. My whole life is something I have lived through. I'm here on the other side, and it's not something I would recommend to people, but it's not something that I take back. That moment is really one of the first things that defined me, because as an 18-year-old girl, you really find out who's there for you when you're at this rock bottom, still living in your parents' house, and your whole life is crumbling down, basically. At least mine was. I didn't know what to do. I was 18. I worked a part-time job. I think I was still working at Burger King, honestly. So I was making $7 an hour. It's great. I could have fed the kid fries, but I was just dang. So for not having a faith background, there were a few avenues you can have. There's only 3 options when you get pregnant. You either have the baby, give the baby up for adoption, or have an abortion. And I didn't have a faith background, and I scheduled an abortion. Didn't follow through with it because I knew that wasn't right for me. I think I scheduled it out of this is a plan B, coincidentally. But it didn't work. I couldn't go. And so I knew I couldn't keep them. It wasn't meant for me. So the only other option was adoption. That whole adoption story in itself is an hour talk. So we're just gonna skip over it in the easiest way. What I learned from that experience was just because your family is there when you're born, and just because they're the ones that share your last name or your DNA, it doesn't mean that they're gonna be there for you when you actually need them. And a lot of my family wasn't. No fault of their own. It's just I was a girl that made a really big mistake, and they didn't agree with some of the choices that I made. 2 days after my high school graduation, I left my parents' house, and the day before, I didn't really have a place to go. I was told I needed to go. And so I moved in with my grandparents. And of course, I'm pregnant at the time, but I'm not really dealing with feelings, because in my family, we don't talk about our feelings, really. We don't share what's happening in our lives, and that's okay. It's just that's how they do things. So I moved in with my grandparents, who are amazing. I love them so much. But they're also this amazing couple that's not equipped to deal with this pregnant teenager who's, when you're a senior in high school, you're already going through all these changes. I didn't really have anything to fall back on. I'm just kind of going through it on my own. I had an amazing older sister who visited me all the time, and she was actually there, my sister Amy, in the delivery room with me. It was a whole experience. When I got home from the hospital, of course, I don't have a child that I brought home. A lot of my family isn't talking to me. And it was as if I went on vacation to a friend's house and then came home, and it was just another day. It was one of the hardest experiences because I wasn't able to really talk to people about it. Besides my older sister, there really wasn't someone I could reach out to. And I felt very alone. I felt very isolated. It was really difficult. I wish I knew Jesus then. He knew me, but I didn't know him. Because in those moments where you're alone and you don't have someone to cling to, you kind of just spiral. And I call this my crazy years. I didn't even do anything not crazy, aside from getting pregnant, but that's a small thing. I went into a very serious depression. And I remember that weekend, my sister came and picked me up, and I stayed with her in Fresno. And I always say she saved my life because it was a really hard time. But after that, I couldn't really stay at my grandparents'. Things were just not the same. I didn't know how to process it. I was a rebellious teenager. I didn't really have my family there. I had just gone through this really hard experience. There was all this happening. So I moved in with a friend of mine who didn't know God either. But at her house, I was able to basically do whatever I wanted. At that time, I was working at this really cool job, Babies R Us. So, I was making more money than like $10 an hour. I was living life. But I wasn't processing anything. Through my life, I looked back and I realized I didn't process things. I just moved on from one scenario, kind of put it away, went to the next, put it away, went to the next. And when you don't have someone that you can work things through, you just stuff it all in a box and hope it's not going to explode and close the lid. It's like when you have leftovers and you're really kind of shoving them in there. You want the whole Thanksgiving dinner to fit in this really small Tupperware, and then you press the lid down really tight. And that's kind of what I was doing with my life. I was pressing down that lid so tight, just hoping that it wouldn't open. So I was really upset, and I didn't process things, and I was alone. I felt very alone for one of the first times in my life. So I decided to, do what was familiar and just be reckless, and I got pregnant again. So as you can imagine, now I'm 19, pregnant, telling my family, who we have a rocky relationship now. They didn't take it lightly, but I don't regret it. I have this amazing son that's 12 years old sitting with us here, and I love him. And I always tell him, and I always say that he saved me. Yes, I wouldn't recommend getting pregnant, giving the baby up, getting pregnant again. It's really rough. Don't do it. Get married, have a baby. It's so much easier. Do it the right way, guys. But he really helped me in a time that I felt alone. I had this person that was just, he was mine. And that feeling when you deliver someone and you know that you get to take your child home, I appreciated him so much more. I mean, I would have appreciated him either way, but I just got to take him home with me. So getting pregnant again, it wasn't easy. My family, reacted in a normal way of what am I doing with my life? And I was living with this friend, wasn't a good situation. And I had this supervisor that I know before I went on my leave, and then I came back, and she was really awesome. Her name's Crystal. She went here. She went to church. She always made work fun. I always remember that. She was incentivizing us to fill our quotas and do all that stuff. But she would talk to me about church, and she would talk to me about friends, and it seemed like she knew what she was doing. And I just was uninterested. And I was like, that's cool. And she would invite me to church. And I was like, that's cool. I wasn't into it. When I found out I needed to leave my friend's house because I basically was asked to leave in a quick situation, I didn't have anywhere to go. And she was like, I live with this couple from church, and I think it was like tomorrow, they have a foreign exchange student who's there, and he's going to leave. And so if you talk to her, maybe you could rent the room. Like, it was this fast situation. I'm like, well, I need a place to live now. So I sat in the Garcia's living room with Lynn and Oscar. And if you guys know them, they're fantastic people. Changed my life 3,000%. But I sat in their living room with Lynn. I literally got off work. I was like 3 months pregnant at the time. And I'm sitting with Lynn, and I always remember telling her, I'm going to have a baby. And she's like, that's okay, I had 4. And I'm like, okay. Well, I only plan on being here for like 6 months. It's not going to be that long. We're just going to do not that much. Like, I'm going to move out. Fast forward a little bit, I'm going to backtrack, but I lived there 6 years. So my 6 months turned into 6 years. But when I moved in with them, I didn't know them. I knew them through Crystal, who I didn't even know that well at that time. So I was kind of in this situation where the people that I normally talk to on a day-to-day basis, I stopped talking to. And the people that I was unfamiliar with kind of just became my whole world. At that time, Crystal was trying to help me get connected and be like, keeping the baby is a great choice. Like, let's show you all these great things. And so I don't know the whole order, but one of the first people I met from church was Gina. We went to lunch. I'm pretty sure it was at Chili's because we had queso and it was delicious. And I dove in to church in a way because we had lunch, and that night was Billy Cape's birthday party. And everyone from church is there because now I understand when something goes on in your life, everyone from church comes. So I was meeting everyone. I also had a lunch with Rick, which you may have heard that story. We ate some tacos. The tacos were great. So the lunch wasn't bad. It was just, I didn't know what was going on. I really was like, I'm going to be in a movie and I don't know how I feel right now. And it was just a whole thing. But I still decided to come to church. I saw something and I'm like, he's a cool pastor. It's gonna work out. I remember I used to sit back in the corner over there when worship set was over here, and I would just kind of sunk in. And I would sit here, and I can't tell you anything I learned or listened to or heard because I wasn't letting it sink in. I had all these walls up, and it's as if Jesus was standing right in front of me, okay, you just gotta crack the window a little bit, just a little. And I'm just nope, I'm okay. I'm not hot, I'm good. I'm just gonna live in my little space, in my little box. And I'd come to Sunday service again, and he'd be sitting there okay, I'm still here for you whenever you want to let me in. And I'm just no, I'm good. I'm just gonna hang out with all the windows shut and just go. And I didn't understand church. I came, I sat in a chair, and I didn't process anything. And looking back, hindsight's 20/20, I wish I would have just cracked the window or opened the door a little bit, because I thought I was going to be okay. I thought getting pregnant, again, moving in with these great people, living in a Christian household for the first time, seeing them openly pray, which was already an awkward situation. I didn't understand how long prayer took, and now I get it when we pray at night and Evan's really tired, and I'm just Lord, let me pray for everybody, those people that I just met and all of our life situations. And I love Evan, and he's just okay, let's just get to the end sometimes because it's after midnight. I just worked 2 jobs today. Let's just get there. And I'm just and then there's this lady that I saw, let's pray for her. And I went to the store and I met this couple. And let me tell you about all my thoughts, because that's how I pray now. But when I didn't pray like that, I didn't understand it. I didn't understand why people took so long. I was guys, you just bless the food and then you eat it. Bless the Lord. Amen. Come on. Why are we saying all our thoughts out loud? We can just think them and we'll be fine. And that's another thing I learned is I love to talk. I don't know if you guys know that about me, but I love to talk. It's one of my passions. And I realize that when you speak out loud, even if you're sitting by yourself in a room, God's always there. He doesn't abandon you. Just because I can't physically see him, it doesn't mean he's my imaginary friend that's a bunny. He's actually there, and he doesn't leave us. And when we say our thoughts out loud, and when we say our prayers out loud to God, it has that gravity. So if you guys don't pray out loud, which you should, I recommend it. I do it all the time. You can come pray with me. It might take a while, but we'll get through it. So I was living in this house with these people who prayed and talked about Jesus. And I was like, oh man, we got to make that 6 months come real quick because, we got to get through this. Somewhere in this timeline, Crystal moves to I was going to say New York. She doesn't move to New York. She moves to Oregon, which is amazing. But it was really sad because I'm like, dang, she's leaving me. Now I'm just with Lynn and Oscar. I don't know them. But I do. I know that they took in this young girl that was 19 and had no idea what I was going to do. It's really hard to raise a baby. Like, it's just hard. Even if you're married, it's hard. I don't know how I did it. I think I blocked out most of Alexander's first year because he obviously woke up in the middle of the night, and I don't remember most of that. And I just think it was like survival mode. But I was living with this amazing couple who they loved me. And I didn't understand that because I hadn't felt that unconditional love from someone where I've made a mistake. I come with them and I'm basically this open book of all my past history just tagged on me. And they didn't care. And I realized that that's how Jesus has always seen me. I've never been hidden from him. Even though I decided to not let him in, there was nothing he didn't know. And you think it would have clicked in my brain, this is unconditional love. Like, this is what it is. I can take it. But I like to learn the hard way. I really like to power through things and stick it to the man. I don't know what man I'm sticking it to, but I'm sticking it to someone. And so Alexander was born in January of 2009. It was great. I gave my heart to Jesus Mother's Day of that year. The Spinks were there. And I was like, okay, this is cool. But I thought when you let him in, it gets easy. Like, oh, okay, you let him in. Like, I know God now. I'm one of the cool people. I can do what I see on the AZHOP videos, and like I can lift my hands in worship now, because I thought that was so foreign and like they had to like go to school for this. It just didn't make sense. And I was like, okay, I'm going to lift my hands. I'm going to worship. I'm going to be all together. I didn't realize that I still had a lot to process, and God was really working with me through everything that I need to work through. There's still a lot. I'm not a perfect person because I don't have to be, and I know that now. I didn't know that then, but now I can say I don't have to be. In 2009, my world kind of did a lot of stuff. So somewhere in that year, our dad was diagnosed with cancer, and somewhere in that year, I decided to not process things again. I'm sure I prayed about it because that's what we do, but I didn't fully commit to it. I didn't fully understand that I could have given God that whole situation. So when your dad gets diagnosed with cancer, it's a really difficult situation. When a parent gets sick at all, it's a difficult situation. And I'm not saying my situation is more difficult than anyone else's. It's hard. I am so happy that I lived with him for high school, because if I didn't, I wouldn't have known him. And he was diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer. And so we didn't know how long he had. Of course, you live in the mindset of like, maybe that clinical trial will work, or maybe this can happen, and maybe this will work, and all of that. In 2010, because I decided to not process my feelings, I got back on the pattern of doing what I was familiar with, which at that time of my life was unfortunately getting pregnant. I was really good at it. And it's like something you wish you're not good at, and I was. I ended up getting pregnant again in January of 2010. I remember I found out on New Year's Day. I was like, oh my gosh, I can't do this. Like, I know it's my fault, 100%. I remember going to Gina's house and sitting on her couch crying, telling her, I don't know what to do. I don't believe in abortion. I can't give another baby up for adoption. I can't keep this baby. Like, I need a fourth option. I don't have a fourth option, but like, I need a fourth option. And I remember she was so nice, and I was telling Alexander, I'm like, I always remember, because she's our Auntie Gina, so I was like, she did what the nice thing is. I'm like, I think she offered to open a full-time daycare for me and all my children that I keep having. And she was like, you have to keep the baby. And I'm like, Gina, I don't think you understand. I think I was working at PetSmart at the time. I had really great jobs. And I'm like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I can't raise this kid. And I was like, there's no other option. I took Plan B. It didn't work. I'm like, it's supposed to work. Like, that's what they say on the box, you know? I don't understand what's happening. It was rough. I didn't tell a lot of people. So I don't know who in this room or is hearing that actually knows this. Maybe you all do. But I didn't openly share it and walk around and say, this is what happened in my life, because I had shame. I understood that I made wrong choices, but I didn't know what to do. So fast forward a little bit, I remember that things didn't feel right. I had been pregnant before. I wasn't new to this, and I was experiencing pain, and I thought it was just a miscarriage, which I remember being in Lynn and Oscar's den, being on my hands and knees, praying to God, I can't have a baby. I can't. I don't know what else to do, but I can't go through this again. I can't. I'm not going to abort it. I can't give it up because that will destroy me. But I can't take it home. Like, I need help. And I think that God works in mysterious ways, and hard times seem like blessings. And I would never say to someone who's experiencing a loss that it's a blessing in disguise. But for me, it was. I had an ectopic pregnancy in February of 2010, and it was a later one. Like, usually you find out pretty early on. Mine, I was already over 10 weeks, I think, when we found out. It wasn't the easiest situation in my life, but honestly, I learned so much from it. I understood. I think that experience caused me to finally understand the weight of getting pregnant. You think the times before would have understood it to me, but that time I really experienced this scary situation that I was hospitalized, having to do an emergency surgery, finding out that they had to cut part of my fallopian tube and I only have one working ovary, which, spoiler alert, it obviously produces a kid because I had one just fine. So thank you, God, for that. But I thought in that moment, I may never get pregnant again. Like, I just messed up my life so much. This is my fault. And so that started me on a whole nother downward spiral. So my dad passed away in June of 2010. And it was really hard. What year was it? June 2011. 2012? 2011. Fact checker over here. Final story, because today is 10 years. This year is 10 years. So June 2011. And my dad didn't believe in faith. He was like, openly, he didn't do that. And I always remember that day, my stepmom had a priest come from the church that she knew, come pray over him. And I remember Lynn being there, and I love her. She was great. For whatever, I don't even remember what the priest was saying, but they would do like, you prayed all the saints, and you do all the hails and the hoo-yahs, and I don't even know this priest guy, but he was great. And they're doing it all, and I just remember looking over at Lynn, and she's like, and Jesus, and Lord and Jesus. And I was like, she's canceling whatever this guy is saying with her mighty self. Lynn is like, let me tell you, the priest guy, this is actually what it really is. And she's like, and I just always remember her mouth being like, I'm just like, okay. I was going to church then. I'd been in the church for like 3 years, maybe. I don't know how often I showed up. If there's an attendance chart, I never got like a perfect attendance sticker for the month. Probably not even close. But I remember calling Rick and asking him if he could be there, because I'm like, well, if this priest guy is going to come, I actually know Jesus. Like, I believe in him. I want someone there from our team. So I called Rick, and I always remember he was outside, and he said yes. And I was like, that's so nice. Like, that was, I didn't understand. But he came, and as Rick was there, my dad passed away, and I always think it was this fitting thing. Like, something got to him. That's what I'm going to believe, is that when he took his last breath, I can't look at Sydney, it clicked. And I believe I will see him again. And I believe that I will get to deal with the hurt, because I can talk to God about all my problems. I can tell Jesus how mad I am, and I wish I could have done, I wish my parents would have been different in my childhood, and I wish my dad would have gone to my high school graduation. And I can tell him this. But at the end of the day, Jesus can't apologize to me for that, because I don't have the problem with him. But what I have is this friend. I have this Father in God who can be there for me when I'm storing all this anger in for someone that I can't yell at. I can't yell at the right person. And I'm okay with that. It sucks, but it works. Rick said something. I'm going to quote you completely wrong, so I'm sorry. And you could even say I didn't say it. So Rick didn't say this. I heard it on the street. Okay. That it was a couple weeks ago that God doesn't promise us an easy life or like that happy life. And that's true. I know in comparison, my life has been great. And I know in comparison that, yes, I was a starving single mom at some points, and I lived paycheck to paycheck, and the Bank of America overdraft department knew my name, and I thought my account was always supposed to be negative $35 because that's just what happened. But ultimately, my life doesn't have to be easy, because in that pain, I'm able to get closer to God. And I'm very stubborn, and unfortunately, I need to hit smack rock bottom to get closer to him. So I'm going to pray for my kids. I pray for them all the time, but that they don't have to go through that rock bottom, because they grow up in a household now where Jesus is available 24/7. He's available when we make mistakes, but he's also available when we lose our car keys, or when we find out we're going to get married, or when we have kids, or when we get an A on an English test. He's always there. It doesn't matter the situation. It's just, he's a constant. And it's taken me, I still struggle with that. I'm not even going to lie, a lot, because my mindset, what's set in me, like how I was wound up, and I need to break all that down, is when I go through struggle, I have that doubt of, yes, God's here, but I'm going to deal with it this way, because that's what I'm comfortable with. I'm comfortable going through the pain, and I'm comfortable going through the hurt. And I should just be comfortable giving it to God. If I can give him the small things, and I can pray over the big things, then I need to give him all the medium things in between. So, just going back to life, my dad passed away, and I dealt with that the best way I could. I didn't get pregnant. That didn't happen. But I got into a relationship because I thought I found love, and it was amazing. And he came to church for a while. He is not the man who I'm married to today. So, spoiler alert on that side. But I I needed someone that was physically there to help me cope with someone that wasn't there. And so I did that the best way I could. I got into this relationship. It seemed great. I thought I was going to marry him. We were talking about it. We were planning it. We were looking at places to live. I was like, oh, thank you, Jesus. Like, my future is set. Everyone liked him. I was like, oh, this is so cool. I did something right. I remember the night we broke up because it came out of nowhere. And I came home to tell Oscar. And he thought I was joking. Like, that's just the response I got. I remember walking in the door. It was late. And Oscar was like, ha, 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 ha. And I'm like, no, it's 100% serious. It came completely out of the blue. That's honestly another thing. Like, thank you, God, for that, because we were not meant for each other. And that's okay. In that moment, it wasn't okay. I was heartbroken. But finally, for the first time, I made a good decision. And that next morning, I woke up, and we were doing worship sets here, and Lynn had one. And I asked Lynn if I could go to church with her and just sit with her at the worship set. So worship was still over here. I remember sitting in the back. And I remember feeling that, you know, when you cry so hard that it hurts, and like your face is so swollen because you just got like stung by all the bees, and like it burns, like you have that burning sensation. Like I can still feel that pain. But for the first time in my life, I decided to feel that pain in church. And I was openly processing it here. I probably cried through that whole time that she sang. I don't even know what she sang. She was at the keyboard. She was beautiful. I don't know what happened. I just knew. I decided that I was going to deal with pain in a healthy way for like a whole week. And then I decided that it's easier to not process pain because, you know, it's classic Caitlin. I run from Jesus. I don't run to him. So got into another relationship. Wasn't really a good one. I also in that time, in that summer of my life, needed clinical help for my depression in life. And that's when the shame really felt. I thought I was never going to be good enough for church. And I think that's when my attendance card really plummeted. Honestly, like that's the part of my life. I wasn't on drugs or drinking. I was there and I was living every day, but I wasn't really there. I would go to work. I would hang out with my amazing kid. I could tell you all about him. But as far as my spiritual growth, I kind of just let it plateau and plummet. Bessie. And it's just, I was okay with that. Because I thought, is Jesus really real? And that's when I really, really started to struggle. I remember going to worship set at night, and Jill and Gina were here, and I told them I needed a sign because I didn't believe that God was there, even though he had answered prayers before and everything was, happening and all these people were in my life. Before I get too far ahead, there are certain people in my early spiritual life that really clung to me. We used to have house church with the Nelsons, and it used to be at the apartment building, and I always remember that because it was the Garcias and the Chapmans, and Donna was an amazing woman, and I was like going through Facebook and looking at stuff, and she like impacted my life. So for those of you that knew her, she's an amazing person. Because I'm looking through things and I'm like, dang, she just got me. And it was honestly one of the first times at church I didn't have to, not that any of you didn't get me. You all came later at different moments, but I really just felt that. There's certain people that you just connect with in that moment, and she blessed my life for the time that she was in it in such a profound way that I still think of her today, and I will always think of her. So I'm going through the motions of church, and things are rocky. And I decide that I don't know Jesus, though. I don't believe in him anymore because that's the decision I made for myself, and he wasn't there for me. And I felt really alone again because I'm processing all these things. And so I was reading Judges, and I felt like Gideon because I'm like, dang, I always thought that story was so funny. Gideon's like, do all these things with me, and like there's a thing with the goat and then the fleece, and he's like asking God multiple times, and he's literally seeing it with his eyes. that God is real. And Gideon's like, but do this other thing for me. And so I really like Judges 6:39, where then Gideon said to God, do not be angry with me. Let me make one more request. And I feel like that's my story. God, don't be angry with me. Let me ask you one more time. But as a parent, your kids are always, you kind of go through that with your kids. They're going to ask you this one more time. And Mom, don't be mad at me, but let me ask you this one more time. And like, no, Mom, but let me ask you this. And you never get mad at your kids. Alexander, I mean, you do. I'm the perfect parent. I don't get mad at all. I'm so calm. Don't talk to Alexander after church. He'll corroborate my story. But like, you get frustrated. But at the end of the day, I still love him. We can go through the same thing, and I can be like, Alexander, I've told you 3 million times X, Y, Z. And it can fit for like any situation as a parent. Like I tell Wyatt all the time, please don't eat the crayon. And then he eats the crayon. And then I'm like, please just stop eating the crayon. And then I realize he's 1 year old, and I'm still just like, but can you just not eat the crayon? Like, please. That's kind of like God. He can tell us something and show us something, and we're going to be like, oh, cool. And then you forget, or you just, decide not to listen. And then you go to God and you're like, but are you really there? Like, is that really you? And God's like, yeah, still here. I'm sure he says it nicer. But in my brain, I'm like, he's just like, oh gosh, it's you again with the same request. And then a day later, I'm like, no, I don't know if I believe you. So I always told Gina and Jill, I said I was like this giraffe. Like, I need a giraffe to walk across the street. Because, like, if a giraffe walked across the street, I'd be like, that's so a God thing. Because there's no zoos. Like, I would definitely believe God. So I got my giraffe. Funny thing is, I don't even remember what it is. But God always answered when I said, can you prove yourself to me one more time? And I said, I need you to do this. And it was either something I needed him to say to me or show me, and he would do it. He never not did it. I'm sure I could do it now, but now I actually believe in God, so I don't need testament anymore. But I needed that proof, and it's okay to need that proof. I don't think that's a terrible thing. Maybe y'all can think different, but in my mind, I needed that. I needed that constant reassurance because I came from a life that didn't have that constant reassurance. And that's the amazing thing about Jesus is he can have this broken person, and he gave me what I needed that I didn't have from my physical parents because he's ultimately everything. And that's amazing to me. So I was finally in a good place. Got out of a bad relationship. Lynn and Oscar decided that they were going to move and retire, and that was a heartbreaking decision that I still struggle with today, but it's great for them. So I lived with them. My 6 months ended up turning into 6 years. Exactly. I moved in, well, not exactly, but almost exactly. I moved out April 2014. I got my very own apartment, which is a really big deal. I could afford it, which is an even bigger deal. And I think I was going to church more. Who knows? But I believed in God. At the core of me, I could pray. And at the core of me, I knew that he was real. Alexander was going to Christian preschool, and I was like, yes, like, look at me succeeding in life. I would tell myself this, like, yes. It made me very happy. And the tip of it was in May of 2016, I started at this amazing Christian organization, Reasons to Believe. And I was like, look at my spiritual life. I'm really proud of hyping myself up, so that's what I do. If you guys don't, I recommend it. If you're having like a bad day, just be like, look at me, I know God, and that just really helps. So, if you're feeling bad, if you're like feeling down, just like compliment yourself a little bit. I'm all for it. So I also ask Evan to like compliment me. We're still working on it, but I'm just kidding. He does. So I started at Reasons to Believe in 2016, and I was like, life is going up. Everything is good now because I believe in God. I know he's there. It's all going to be fine because, your Christian life is only uphill and it can only get better from here because like all these Christians are happy all the time and they know how to process things like adults. Well, 2 days after working at RTV, I found out that my grandfather passed away. Not out of anything unexpected. He was, 95 when he passed away. So he lived a great life. Like, and he went in his sleep. It's like, something that you're like, that's the way. When I go, I want it to be like that. Pain-free, in my sleep, close my eyes, open my eyes, I'm with God. But that was honestly the first pain that I didn't react from. I just processed in that moment. And I think that's the healthiest grief I've ever gone through. Because I knew that, yes, you can feel upset and you can be mad at God, but ultimately, like, it's okay. We're all going to work out. I didn't get into any more bad relationships. I actually just stopped dating. And then I went through this start of, I'm not going to get married because that's probably not in the cards for me. It's really hard to find someone. And then when I find someone, I have to tell them all that junk. Like, that's a tough conversation. I don't want to talk to people like this. Somewhere in between 2015 and 2017, I'm sure it was 2016, I got baptized. I decided I really wanted to plunge in, literally. And so I did. And I don't regret that moment either. I know that when I got baptized, it was amazing. I was finally, like I said, on that upward thing. Things weren't always easy. Every day I didn't have thousands of dollars in my bank account because that's not how life is. Life is hard and life is a struggle. But life is made easier through God, and God can help us with our struggles. Like I said, you may not hear this profound message, but for me, that's a big deal. I need to tell myself these small things. And some days, it's the little things that get me through of not going through my pattern of, I'm depressed, I'm going to sit in my corner, I'm going to have another kid, I'm going to start a relationship that's terrible. It's just these simple things of, God is here. He's physically here. He's spiritually here. He's 1,000% with me at all moments of my life. So I decided I'm going to make this list of what I want in a husband, and that's the only way I'm going to find one. And I made this list, and he had to love God first, because in that point of my life, Jesus was the most important person to me. So my husband had to have that same spiritual growth with me. And I wasn't even I can't recite the Bible or most verses. I can tell you Jeremiah 29:11 and now Judges, and that's about it. I'm really good at Google searching though, and I know stories, and I'll call Gene and I'll be like, who's that person that did this thing? VeggieTales is great if you need a quick story. Fact check though, they get a little things wrong. It's not a tomato and a cucumber actually going through these Bible stories. It's, spoiler alert. But it's great. It helps you learn. And for someone that didn't have that faith background, I was able to learn. Alexander and I would watch VeggieTales and be like, this is so cool. They'd tell you this verse. I got all these verses in my pocket that I can't tell you now, but they're there. And so I decided maybe I'll start dating, but I didn't really want to. So I had this whole list. He had to love Jesus. He had to be a good person. He had to be my best friend and make me laugh. And then there's the other things that aren't important, but they're really important. He had to be tall. He had to be taller than me because I want to be able to wear heels. I don't know if you know me. I don't like to get ready. This is a big deal. But I'm when I do get a dress, because when I get married, I'm going to be a 1950s housewife, and I'm going to wear pearls while I'm vacuuming with my heels and a dress. I've never done that once. But if I do, I want my husband to be taller than me. And I had this whole thing. So in January of 2017, this old friend of mine that we hung out with often, he sent me flowers. And I'll always remember the card because at RTB, it's what really told them that that's the man I'm going to marry. And the card said, "Happy birthday, Grandma." And I was like, this is just my friend, guys. It's not that big deal. I didn't know. And I always say this. Evan and I, our first date was in April of 2017, and it was horrible. Honestly, If you've ever heard our first date story, you wouldn't have given him a second one. I wouldn't have given myself a second one. Like, it was just, we didn't know, he's smiling awkwardly. We didn't know how to go from friends to dating. It was this very awkward path. Like, I put my hands in my pockets so that he wouldn't touch me. Literally, I was like, okay, let's go now. Like, it was weird. So we dated again, and I was just like, oh gosh, like, we're gonna have to like hold hands eventually. And then I wanted him to hold my hand, and he didn't. And then I was just like, oh my gosh, we're gonna have to like hug. That's literally how we were. How we made it to today is a miracle. But we decided in May of 2017 that we were gonna date. And we ultimately decided in that moment that if we're going to date, it's going to be forever. And you always say that, you know, you get together with that high school boyfriend and you're like, we're going to date forever and ever, and then you don't. But I told Evan, like, I'm not going through this. Like, it's either you can commit or, you know, things happen, but like, we're either going to commit to forever or we're going to commit to nothing, because I can't have an in-between. I have this son that I want him to grow up in a 2-parent household. But if you can't be there, it's not going to work. So I knew the second he asked me to be his girlfriend that I was in love with him, because God works in miraculous ways. And I have a husband who knows my past. I didn't have to have all these awkward conversations with him, because he knew me. He knew me in high school as this fun, cute cheerleader who's in the prime of my life. And then I, you know, left school for a while, and then I came back, and then I went through all these ups and downs, and he was there. He knew Alexander. He knew I came with a history. And that's the amazing thing about when you meet someone that you're going to marry. For me, it just kind of clicked. I still doubted it. Like, when he proposed, I stood there for like 10 minutes and I didn't say yes because I didn't understand what was happening, because I don't know how to process my emotions fully. But God placed someone in my life, and all I had to do was wait for the moment for both of us to be ready to date. And mine and Evan's marriage is not perfect. I am perfection. He's working really hard at it. And so, I'm just kidding. He's amazing. But, you know, we're going to be married 2 years this year. We'll be married 2 years, together for 4 years. So we haven't even done that long. We say we're going to live to be 111, so we're going to have 80-something years married, and it's going to be great. That's what we tell Jesus. We've been writing on our anniversary cards. Here's to like year 1 of 80. Like, we're counting down our life, which is cute and morbid, but cute. And I recommend marriage for everyone. I think you all should do it. From being on the flip side of not being married to being married, it's great. Don't do it until you're ready. You know, like, don't just go like find someone and then get married. So a lot of people in here are married. It's great. But if you're not, don't just go look for it. It'll come to you, I promise. But he completes me, and we're perfect together. It's messy. We live in a 280 square foot apartment, and yes, it's 280 square feet. The bathroom is 20. So my apartment is 260 square feet. We measured it the other day. I was living in denial, so I hadn't measured it the whole 6 years I've lived there. So it's probably like smaller than this room. And we have myself, my 6'4" husband, Alexander, and a baby, all in our tiny, tiny apartment. And, you know, COVID happens, like, we can't leave last year. So we got real close. And I always tell Evan, if we can make it through COVID and quarantine in a 260 square foot apartment and we didn't kill each other, you know, we're going to last. I tell Gina, one day, I was worried during COVID. I never had the harm to kill people. But I told her one day, if I just call you and I'm like, I accidentally did it, you know, I made out, oh, Evan's not here anymore. Like, just can you help me through it? Because anyone would be driven to that. But we did it. So as I was typing this out the first time, I got kind of 2 conclusions. I'm wrapping up here, I promise. The first one that God told me was, my path to Jesus feels like an acceptance speech. it feels like I'm sitting up here and I'm like, thank you everyone for helping me on my path to accepting Jesus. I'd like to thank Pastor Rick and Janet for your support. Thank you everyone for coming. Thank you to the Garcias. Thank you to everyone in my life, blah, blah, blah. But ultimately, that's kind of what it is. Because you go through and different people plant different seeds in your life. Diana Spink was really good, and she tried to help me understand what praying in tongues meant. But at that moment, I didn't understand what praying in tongues meant. I just was like, I can't learn this language. This is not for me. I still can't do it. Jesus is probably like, okay, scratch that off the list. That's okay. Because I'm not meant to have that gift, and that's fine. But, the Spinks were in my life, and Dale and Donna were in my life, and the Chapmans, and the Thompsons, and the Niftons, and Jan, and Rick and Janet, and, everyone else. You all have given me some little piece, some seed that has started growing. And today, I sit before you as I was given this image, so if it doesn't make sense, I'm sorry, it's my image, so we're just going to go with it. But I'm this, tree now who's bearing fruit, because I can talk to people openly about God, and I'm not ashamed. I have had conversations with strangers about Jesus, and I don't back down. And yes, I can't back it up with all the Bible verse facts, but I can tell you things that are real. And so I feel like that's how life is, and that's how my journey was. You meet different people who are going to sprinkle a seed into you. So it's like my word of encouragement, word of the day. If you ever feel like you have that encouragement and it doesn't take root, it's okay, because just like farmers, you're going to throw out all these seeds and not all of them are going to plant something, but one of them will. And you don't know if it's yours or if it's the next person. But the person that I get to, grow with and bear all my fruit with is my amazing husband, because Jesus is at the center of our relationship. So much so that I used to say when I got married, I didn't want a long sermon. I was like, I just really want that ceremony to let's just go up there, we'll say our vows real quick, and then we'll go party. And when I got engaged, I was like, Evan, can we have this whole message from Rick of talking about Jesus and have worship? Can we make it a mini church service? So for those that went to my wedding, yes, that's exactly what it was. Is like church, and I love it, and I don't regret it, because that's what I was. So when I was writing this message last night, I thought that was my conclusion, that go out there, tell everyone about God, spread all the seeds, and it can be the smallest thing, but it's going to cultivate eventually. But really, this is where I'm going to cry. I'm writing this as a thank you to church, because I started church 12 years ago, and I was 19 and pregnant, and I didn't have a family because my family decided that they didn't want to be a part of my life. They are now, and that's great. But in that moment when I needed them, they weren't. And I came to Sunday church, and I was met with people who didn't judge me and who didn't tell me how much shame I carried with me, and they didn't remind me that I kept getting pregnant, and they weren't mean. And I've been to basically every single house church in here at one point or another, and it is at the point where this is my family, 1,000%, because the very first time when we planned a party or my wedding, our wedding, but all of that, church, we have to account for 30 people right off the bat, and so that's why our head counts are so high, because we're like, let's invite everyone who goes to church. Because I could recall at some point, it may not be as deep as with others, but having a moment with basically every person here and anyone watching, that I'm assuming is millions of people, because it's a great story. But that's exactly how it is. This is my family, and you guys have been here for me when others weren't. And I will make sure that my kids, I'm there for them. They're not going to make mistakes and do drugs and do any of that. They're going to be perfect little angels. But if they aren't, I know that I'm not perfect, and I won't respond in calmness, but I want to respond in a way that, yes, you made a mistake, but I'm still there for them, because that's how God is. Yes, I made a couple mistakes, but he didn't leave me. And just like Gideon, I could go to him and say, but can you tell me again that you're still here? And then next week make a mistake and then be like, oh man, he doesn't love me, but he still does. And so we are moving to Texas. It's not a shock. It's just, we announced this. It's something that has been on my heart, honestly, my heart for like 10 years. But it finally came true a couple weeks ago when Evan and I said, if we ever get our economic stimulus that never is going to come, we'll move. That'll be what we do with our moving money. And we got it. And we decided right then. When we made that decision, it was really hard for me. It wasn't hard to make the decision to move. I 100% stand by it. But we didn't have a job or a place to live or like a whole plan. So we kind of just said, okay, God, you answered this prayer. Like you gave us that peace that we didn't think was going to come. I guess we just need to jump and do the rest. And we did. Now we have a job and we have a plan of places to live, and like it works, because it's really scary to have a leap of faith. But when it's meant to be, it will fall into place. And I don't have to control every piece of it, which is amazing for me because I want to control everything. I was texting my older sister this morning. I was like, I need a Bible verse. So she helped me with this one. But this is basically what I think of as church. So if this has like some other message, just go with me, guys. I'm really good at finding the verse that I need for the moment, okay? But it's 1 Peter 4, 8 through 11. Above all, love each other deeply, because love covers a multitude of sins. Offer hospitality to one another without grumbling. Each of you should use whatever gift you have received to serve others as faithful stewards of God's grace in its various forms. If anyone speaks, they should do so as one who speaks the very words of God. If anyone serves, they should do so with the strength God provides, so that in all things God may be praised through Jesus Christ. To him be the glory and the power forever and ever. Amen. That's 1,000% what AZHOP is, because whatever gifts you guys have, I feel like I've seen them. And your hospitality has been shown to me in so many ways, and I wish I could pay you back. I wish I could write you a letter to every single person individually and tell you how much your life has impacted mine. And I know I'm not dying, and I will come back, and I will see people again. And like 2020 has taught us that, you know, FaceTime and Zoom work great. So ultimately, as I wrote this, I wanted to say thank you, because my story started here, and I started really young, and I'm leaving with a family and with this promise of God and with my extended family. I wish I could take with you, or like move the California economy to Texas or whatever, but or not the economy, I want to leave it here, but it's just, life is hard. But I know in this moment that I'm going to process it through God, and I will keep in touch, like writing in a yearbook with everyone. And I am just so profoundly blessed and so profoundly thankful that I get to be a part of your family and that you guys are a part of mine. Because honestly, when we pull away on the 30th to leave, it's going to be really hard. And when we talk about the people that are harder for us to leave, yes, there's like, you know, family, I guess, but she comes to church, so it works. I'm most sad that on Sundays I won't be sitting here, because this is my life, and I'm so thankful and so proud that AZHOP has turned me into the person I am today. So with all that, my story is basically done, but I would like to pray over church, and it may not be profound or pretty, but it's going to be short because I'm blubbering and I don't like to cry. So, Father God, I thank you for everyone in this room. I thank you for everyone that's watching. I thank you for those that are not, that have walked through the store in one way or another. I thank you that you can walk in here with your sin and your shame like a scarlet letter on your vest, and that this is a place of acceptance, and that they will help you walk through it and learn what you actually should do in a situation. And God, I thank you just for every member here. I pray that this house, that their actual other houses, that their families are just always covered by your love, by your comfort, by your strength every single day. And God, I pray that we don't lose that connection. We don't lose that comfort, that peace, that thing that grips us together, that we are always an internet puzzle. And Lord, I'm just so thankful that this is where you have called me to grow. And so I pray over all of them in your name. And I know that AZHOP is already doing amazing things because it has changed my life profoundly. So I pray all this in your name. Amen.
So we're going to pray over them next week, not today. So we get them one more week.
One more week.
And thank you for that.
Yeah. Hopefully.
I mean, we got to watch all that, but it was great to hear your perspective. Because mine was a little different. But
There was a great tacos still at the lunch.
that's right. Sharky's and Bethany.
There, I knew it was in Pasadena. I just couldn't remember. She didn't have tacos. And I was like,
No.
probably because of that lunch.
All right. Well, be blessed. Have a great afternoon. We'll see you tonight on prayer call for those who want to join us at 8 o'clock. And make sure you hug these guys because you only get to do it one more time after today. Okay?
Yes.
Good job.